Washington Journal continues.
And joining us, the president of Judicial Watch is Tom Fitton. He serves as the president, judicialwatch.org, the website, here to talk about issues of the Russia investigation and other topics. Mr. Fitton, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Remind the viewers about the purpose of your organization. Also, if you would, could you tell our viewers how you're funded?
Judicial Watch is funded through voluntary donations from the American people. We're a nonprofit educational foundation that tries to bring more transparency, accountability, and the rule of law to our nation's public life.
So one of those issues of transparency that your organization spends a lot of time with, previous and up to date, is that of this look into the Russia investigation and the background of it. Remind people, I guess because we heard about it a lot, but remind people again, what was essentially your take on what was done in that investigation?
Well, my take is that the Obama administration and the Hillary Clinton campaign were very nervous about the legal issues surrounding Hillary Clinton's emails and, frankly, other misconduct of the Obama administration in 2016, as it related to Hillary Clinton's emails, and then B, as it related to the targeting of President Trump. So they doubled down on it, manufactured false allegations against President Trump to excuse unprecedented spy operations and then later criminal investigations into Trump and his team.
And so as far as all that investigation, what substantially came out of that? I know we saw the Mueller report eventually, but as far as the look into the investigation itself, what conclusive evidence have we found?
Well, just recently we have information that our intelligence community had intelligence that the Russians, evidently listening to Hillary Clinton and company, knew that Hillary Clinton was making it all up or was trying to use these Russia allegations, collusion allegations, that were fanciful to distract the American people from her email allegations. And that was briefed to the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and it was actually referred to the FBI for further investigation, but obviously not much was done with it.
And so as far as the actual release of information, one of the things that people were looking for, particularly if they were following this story, was something called the Durham report and releases from that. What was that report and what was released from it?
Well, Durham hasn't released anything. There have been some disclosures by the Office of Director of National Intelligence and other agencies. Judicial Watch, for instance, Judicial Watch received some key documents about what was going on. But Durham has had one prosecution/plea deal and not much else.
And so I think the Washington Post reported last week that as far as investigations go, there's still no criminal charges or a public report on this. Why do you think that is?
You'd have to ask the Justice Department. I think it's a real disappointment. Durham was appointed in April of 2019. As far as I'm concerned, there's no excuse for the lack of action. I'm not seeing evidence that he's actually done a serious investigation. Let's say compare and contrast it to Mueller's operation. You saw what a significant D.C. criminal investigation looks like. You have witnesses coming in, you got grand juries operating, all the indicia of a serious criminal investigation aren't, none of that being present in the Durham operation.
In most recent days, the president, you probably saw this as well, sent out in a tweet as far as the authorization of a declassification of sorts. Talk a little bit about that tweet, what resulted from it, and what do you expect from it?
Well, he said he was ordering the declassification of everything related to the Rushgate probe and Hillary Clinton's emails as well, which we're very heavily involved in. The Justice Department hasn't done anything. They haven't released anything to us. They told us the tweet has no meaning legally. I don't know whether that's legally right or true. But my question is, why is the Justice Department and the State Department, all of these agencies, continuing to cover up documents? And this is not like required by law. It's usually discretionary, despite the president's wishes to the contrary.
When you say and use the word cover up, then who's behind the cover-up, and are you pointing directly to the president's people appointed by the president to handle these issues?
Well, ultimately, someone like Christopher Wray is responsible. Attorney General Barr is responsible. They know these documents are out there, but they don't have much interest in having them released in a timely way, if at all.
I suppose that you've not the first time I asked this question, but as far as the timing so far out from the Russia investigation, everything behind that, why do you think that matters today?
Well, because, as I call it, the coup is still going on. You still have illegal leaks targeting President Trump of classified information. What took place during the Russia investigation was a crime, in my view. The more we have about it, the more information we have about it, the more accountability there'll be. Certainly, it's not sufficient to get a criminal investigation or prosecution going. But if we don't know what they did, there's going to be zero public pressure or less than public pressure on the Justice Department to hold them accountable. And one of the reasons that Durham has been able to skate without much in the way of having to do anything is because only now are we learning some key aspects about the corruption behind Russiagate.
Such as how?
Well, that Brennan knew and Barack Obama knew specifically that the Russiagate smears were just that, and that they were concocted by the Clinton campaign to target Trump. And we've known that generally, and just in the last few months we have information about, going back to the beginning, that Flynn was knowingly and falsely targeted for prosecution by the Obama administration and then the Mueller operation. We're only hearing about that in the last few months. Didn't Durham know about this early on? And if not, why didn't he? And if he did, why hasn't he acted on it?
This is Tom Fitton joining us for this discussion. And if you want to ask him questions, you could give us a call. If you want on the phone lines, you can also post on Twitter and our Facebook page. As far as our discussion with Tom Fitton. The latest entry into related matters, Tom Fitton, are these series of stories coming out of the New York Post. On its face, what do you think of them?
Well, they confirm that there's significant corruption with the way Biden and his family were operating during his vice presidency, probably before that, that they were trading on his name, trading on his office, to line their pockets. That's what the evidence shows. And it shows you why they were, given what went on, we're supposed to forget about impeachment and the coup attack on President Trump earlier in the year. Remember, the president asked a question or two of the Ukrainians about what was going on with Biden and Burisma. And they went crazy, his political opposition. Now we know why they went crazy, because he was onto something, and he was onto something probably even bigger than he knew.
When you say then it confirms, how do you clarify that? How do you qualify that?
Well, the president, Vice President Biden, for instance, admitted to firing or having fired the head, the top prosecutor in Ukraine that coincidentally had been investigating his son's board, Burisma. We have emails coming out, not from computers left by Hunter Biden, but from the State Department, showing that they had longstanding concerns. The email suggests they had longstanding concerns about Biden and Burisma. One top official called it the gift that keeps on giving, and complained about the Russians trolling Biden over the Burisma issue. It was a big issue in the State Department. We saw that confirmed in the testimony of during the impeachment. We're seeing it confirmed in documents, and now we're having it filled in, the blanks filled in, as to what monies were being sloshed around in these new Hunter Biden emails, it looks like.
So you probably heard then from the statement you just made that that there were a lot of investigations. We called for the removal of that investigator anyway because he was slow walking the process. How do you respond to that?
Oh, those are after the fact rationalizations. How many prosecutors does the Vice President of the United States of foreign countries get involved in firing? It's insane.
So, and to the New York Post story, is there a direct line in your mind from the computer itself to the person who found it to Rudy Giuliani? Is there direct lines then to evidence, or are there still questions as far as the validity of the evidence?
Well, I think the New York Post tried to figure out the chain of custody there, and I would hope the Justice Department and the FBI are doing something about it. I'm concerned they're covering it up and frankly leaking to try to undermine the allegations. But it seems to me a relatively straightforward issue is to figure out whether the emails are legit or not. Namely, we have information that Hunter Biden's lawyer was seeking return of the material, and I haven't seen anything from the Biden campaign to suggest that the emails are not accurate. In fact, they are confirming. There's a Washington Post piece by David Ignatius this weekend where Biden is reported to tell someone how he needed to make money for the family, and then we have Politico being told by the Biden campaign, well, there's no official schedule meeting between Biden and this Burisma official, but we can't rule out that it didn't happen informally. Oh boy, this is just piling up around Biden, and I suspect it will just get worse and worse.
So for its part, the Washington Times this morning has a story taking a look at this issue, and they say in its first paragraph, or at least the first sentence, said the Hunter Biden, it was himself that left the laptop computer at a Wilmington, Delaware repair shop, whose owner eventually gave the hard drives and material to the FBI, then later to President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. That shop owner has, according to the Washington Times, the shop owner has told that to a Senate committee.
Yeah, when you confirm that to an official government body, you're putting yourself at legal risk if you're lying. And let's get it all out. I want to hear what Joe Biden has to say about these emails. Did he, for instance, get any money from his brother and his son? Did he get money from them? Where was that money coming from? And we want the details about where Hunter Biden was getting money. The scandal of the Biden issue is significant, obviously. I'm also concerned about why the Justice Department and the FBI has been sitting on this material for almost a year. What have they been doing? Attorney General Barr, you may remember earlier this year, he said, well, I don't see any evidence about Obama or Biden's involvement in crimes. They're not going to be investigated or, pursued significantly. Well, did he know about the laptop at the time? And if not, why not?
Do you think, what's the likelihood that any other information from the Justice Department, the FBI, or related is going to come up so close to the election day?
Oh, I don't know. We may just get documents in the ordinary course because of the scheduling of our Freedom of Information Act lawsuits and what's required. I'm not sure what comes out between now and then. Separately, we may get some documents about Dr. Fauci and his top deputy and their communications about China, WHO, and coronavirus as soon as next week. So we never know what's going to be in the mail the next day.
Tom Fitton, our guest, to talk about these issues with Judicial Watch. Our first call for you comes from New Hampshire. This is Sarah on our independent line. Sarah, you're on with our guest. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. When Donald Trump asked the Russians for help during his campaign while we were fighting the Russians in Syria, I think that should have been enough to open a full investigation on Donald Trump and his minions, and they should have been totally vetted out of the campaign, the race at that time. They would have found out all the ties between Donald Trump's men, his campaign people, between them and Russia, them and Ukraine, and we wouldn't be in this debacle right now with this sociopath running our country into the ground under a Russian coup. This is a Russian coup over our country that Donald Trump and his people are perpetrating against the American people, democracy, and against our Constitution. Then we had Donald Trump shaking down the Ukraine, which is extortion. Donald Trump lying to the American people 20,000 times and not protecting us from COVID-19. 250,000 Americans dead.
You brought up a couple of topics, so we'll let our guests address that. Mr. Fitton, go ahead.
Well, on the Russian side, that's just a crazed conspiracy theory, not backed up by evidence. President Trump, nor any other American, knowingly worked with the Russians to interfere in our campaign. That's the conclusion of the Mueller report. That's the conclusion of every indictment that Mueller brought related to the Russian hacking alleged of the DNC and Democrat emails. There's no there. So you're saying a bunch of words that aren't backed up by reality.
From Massachusetts, James is next. Democrats line. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Fitton, I would like to ask you a couple of questions if I could. I know you mentioned shortly that if you testify before Congress and tell a lie, there should be criminal consequences over it. And I'd like to know if you think, well, you brought up Dr. Fauci shortly, do you believe that the 4 times that he went before Congress and swore under sworn testimony that Donald Trump was following all the information he was given and following the science and doing everything he was told. Do you believe Dr. Fauci should go to jail for that? And one other question I have for you. Lindsey Graham had an interview with IG Horowitz. And if you want, I'd like to tout C-SPAN's archive, if I could. If you go onto C-SPAN's archive, you can find that entire testimony, and there's a picture of Lindsey Graham, and that picture is just above the caption that says, "Please listen to 35 minutes of Lindsey Graham's lies and conspiracy theories." So that's what's going on at C-SPAN and every other news agency in America. Censorship, and they're being carrying the water of Joe Biden like I can't even believe.
Okay, James, we'll let it there. Mr. Fitton, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm not aware of Dr. Fauci lying to Congress, so I wasn't quite sure what the question was there. I'm not quite sure what the question is about Inspector General Horowitz, although Horowitz's report is worth reading. His reports, I would say, and that to me is something everyone ought to be reading if they haven't already, because it really demonstrates the fraudulent nature and criminal nature of the Obamagate/Russiagate attack on our democracy and our republic.
Republican line. This is Donald, Chesapeake, Virginia. Go ahead.
Good morning, C-SPAN.
Good morning.
I'd like to, I have a couple questions about Virginia voting. I mean, there was over 500,000 votes that aren't being counted or something, or there was something wrong with them. I was wondering about that, and I was wondering about the investigation over the last 3 years and how that prosecutors, people erased all their phones. Is there going to be something come out of that?
Mr. Fitton, that's a good segue, because one of the other issues that Judicial Watch does on an active basis, this idea of mail-in voting and watching over that. Talk a little bit about the work you're involved there, and if you could, relate it to the caller's question.
Well, our concern is, and Judicial Watch has several lawsuits on this issue, is that the rolls aren't clean enough to mail blindly into them, where you have ballots being mailed to people who haven't asked for them, ballot applications being mailed to people who haven't asked for them. In this election cycle, I think it's going to be 100 million total ballot applications will be mailed to people who haven't asked for them. Typically ballot applications or ballots are mailed in most states to people who've asked for them. In some states you have vote by mail generally, but we've had this massive increase in the vote by mail operations, as I said, in a way that I think increases the risk for voter fraud. I think the call is referencing numbers that occurred during the 2020 primary, where you had over 550,000 vote by mail ballots thrown out because of challenges and other problems with the ballots, and that number was above the 319,000 number for the 2016 general election. So the concern is you're going to have potentially millions of people disenfranchised because they relied on mail-in balloting to vote. And if you vote by mail, it's been generally understood your vote is more likely to be challenged, intercepted, lost, or, as I say, thrown out. And my view is you should be voting in person.
Your colleague there at Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell, took a recent look at some of the inconsistencies or problems that have risen in specific areas of the United States. Overall, do you think, if those are true, do you think it's enough to sway an election?
Well, the problem is we don't know, and that's why you want to have a system in place that reassures people that the votes are going to be counted competently and accurately, that only eligible voters are voting. We just announced a study last week that showed in 29 states there are 1.8 million extra names on the rolls, meaning people who you've got more people on the rolls than are living there and eligible to vote. So when you've got dirty lists, it can mean dirty elections. And my concern is that they're going to be counting ballots well after Election Day, not so much because they got a lot of ballots on Election Day, but because some states are counting ballots that arrive after Election Day, which to me, again, invites voter fraud. In California, they'll be counting ballots, according to their rules, for 17 days after the election. That's just absurd. And frankly, even these early voting opportunities for voters, I understand why it may be more convenient to vote on, for weeks before Election Day, but to me, it's at odds with the best way to run an election. And because, for instance, look at the Biden emails, or maybe something Trump's saying on the other side may sway people who otherwise would have voted for him to vote against him.
Oh, go ahead.
And they can't change their vote 2 weeks, 3 weeks out. Once you make your vote and something comes up between that and that time and Election Day that might change your vote, it's too late.
There's a lot of legal teams going to be involved in this process. Does Judicial Watch insert itself that way in any way?
Oh yeah, we're examining and monitoring what's been going on. We sued in California to try to prevent a lawless mail ballot scheme. We ended the suit after they fixed the law and promised that they wouldn't be mailing essentially dead people and people who've moved away. We have 3 active lawsuits to clean up the rolls in North Carolina, Colorado, and Pennsylvania, and those lawsuits will continue past the election. But even our warnings to states have a positive impact. In Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, when we warned them earlier this year or late last year that they had dirty names on their rolls, they immediately removed the 69,000 names of people who shouldn't be there.
And just to clarify, is the concern over mail-in voting, the widespread mail-in voting, or is it absentee voting, or is it both?
Well, these days it's a distinction without a difference, because you have votes, so many ballots going to people who haven't asked for them one way or another. Here in the District of Columbia, they just mail the voter registration list, more or less. That's happening in California and Nevada famously as well. And when you have inactive names on the list, they won't necessarily get a ballot, but those names can be used to request ballots, and obviously anyone on that name can show up and vote in person. But when you've got dirty lists, you really shouldn't be mailing blindly into them. It just is a recipe for fraud and chaos.
With Tom Fitton, we'll hear from Ohio on our independent line. This is Greg. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Fitton.
Morning.
I love all the work you do, and I hope you can dig up some of that Biden crap. As far as this voting stuff you were just talking about, all that people got to do is look at H.R. 1, that first bill that Congress passed. They couldn't get that done, so now they're going to try this mail-in crap. All they're doing is trying to steal the election. The news media are totally behind this crap. We ain't got to worry about Russia or China. It's the damn media that's going to ruin this country. Other than that, man, I love your work. Keep it up.
Thank you. H.R. 1 was the number one, it's H.R. 1, number one. It was the number one piece of legislation introduced by the new Pelosi House when she took over again. And it incorporates many of the so-called election and voting reforms the left wants. Making national ballot harvesting, eliminating essentially voter ID, all sorts of reforms that they're now trying to mandate through litigation. The left opposes voter ID. They oppose us on cleaning up the rolls. They oppose virtually every sensible security regulation related to voting. And in my view, it doesn't make any sense unless they want to be able to steal elections when necessary.
Stephanie's next. Brooklyn, New York. Democrats line. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I'm responding to the Russian investigation. When Barr came in, he turned the report around in the Mueller report, which he lied about. Trump was, his administration was and still is with Russia. Giuliani, his lawyer, who is a crooked lawyer. There's propaganda stuff with Biden's son. It's all a story. Everybody's going to look back when all this is over with about Trump, his children, his daughter Ivanka, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and all that's going on and how much they are stealing from the people, from the working people. We have nothing. The deficit is high, the rich is richer, and the poor is poorer.
So,
We
Stephanie,
have a president
what specifically would you like our guest to address?
lying about the Russian investigation. And Mr. Fitton, you are always on Fox News. Fox News